1. This was back around when I was between 17 and 19 years old, 20 years ago. When I was about 17 years old, I was friends with this girl Rachel, from an online chat forum. Much like Reddit, but geared towards a singer we both liked. I didn't have many friends, so when we met for coffee, and she seemed really cool, since she was a year older than me. Rachel said she worked in public relations but never had money. She was always wanting me to pay for everything. I had a job she technically didn't. I felt that because she didn't have a lot, I could get her stuff from time to time. Boy, was I naive. One summer, she came to our house and stayed for 3 months, not paying rent or anything else for that matter. After a while, my mom noticed that she was using us, mainly me, for her good times. I sent her on trips and shopping trips. My mom mentioned this to me in passing, saying I should pay my bills before her spending habits, and that she was my only older friend. I was blind to her actions. One day, close to Christmas on Rachel's shopping trips, she noticed this puffy vest. It was yellow, her favorite color. She tried it on and said she felt like a queen in it. I went back later. I bought it for her in her size. Size being important in a second. After I bought said vest, I went home, wrapped it up, and put a big gold bow on it. I put it under the tree for her and waited. Come closer to Christmas, she stops texting. This was normal behavior for her because she would do this for a week or two at a time, and then call or text back later. But she didn't text back until almost after Christmas. I would like to point out why this doesn't make sense. It was because in these times you had pay-to-call cards that allowed you to call a certain amount of minutes on this card. So her not calling or texting was because of lack of funds. Yes, I paid for phone cards for her and me. She texted me on Boxing Day, and, like the dumb blonde, I went shopping again. So we go into the same store where I bought the jacket, and she threw a blue vest into my arms and said she liked that one and wanted to buy it for some time. And it looked better than the urine color vest, in her words. I was gobsmacked, to say the least. She waited until after I had money to go out again and didn't care if I got her a gift. She wanted something better. The yellow vest was only $15, which to me was a lot of money. I made up a believable lie and said that I only had another hour before I had to go to work. She whined and asked again if I could get her the jacket. I said I will get my mom to pick it up later. She whined and said it was on sale, so it was only $30. I told her I didn't have that money and left. I caught a bus and went home. I was about to open the gift and return it to get her the blue one, when I was hit with a better idea. Wait until she couldn't return it, and would have to give away or wear it. Since she wanted that yellow one so badly, Rachel would wait until next year. The next year, we were still friends, but kept each other at arm's length. That said, closer to Christmas, I told her I got her a Christmas gift and gave her the box. She opened it like a lion shredding a zebra open, and there in its glory was the urine color vest she didn't want the previous year. She was excited for a second, and put it over her head with her boobs grown and her tummy too. Her face turned sour when the zipper barely came up to her chest. She mumbled out a pathetic thank you, got her coffee, and left. Rachel left me sitting in the Starbucks for a bit, until I got a text from her saying we should take some time to be apart. I agreed. Also worth mentioning, she never spent any money on me and never got me a birthday or Christmas card. It wasn't until I saw her a few years ago, and she had her front teeth knocked out, became bigger, and was drinking cheap beer at a bar. The reason I tell this story is my mom bought the same color vest tonight, and her and I had a good laugh about sour vest Rachel. 2. How it started. Early in my teens, I tumbled into a deep depression and struggled for a long time. Around 8 years ago, after I broke through my depression thanks to therapy and medication, I also figured out I am transgender. Fast forward a full year. I met my now ex. Within the first week of dating, I poured everything out. I told my ex I wasn't ready to socially transition at all. Mind you, I only recently got a decent paying job, still lived with my parents, etc. My ex seemed very supportive, and assured me they have no problem whatsoever with me being who I am. And so 4 years passed when we finally decided to buy a house together. My ex's parents, however, were loaded, and they made a nice donation to my ex by splitting up their savings between the siblings when we told them about our plans. At this point, we also discussed that if things were to go sideways, we'd just friendly part ways and split everything back to each other's original investment. We made some offers and ended up buying a nice place in between our 2 places of work. Since I had a car, commuting for me was easy, but for my ex it was more difficult. They had to take public transport every day for 1 hour there and back. Out of the frying pan into the fire. We adopted 2 cats. We were both animal people, and COVID just hit, so I wouldn't feel so lonely working from home. Well, my ex was out working on site. However, the high I was riding of finally being independent and being able to live my own life was short-lived. See, my job requires me to be on call for several days of the month, usually 7, 14 if a colleague is ill. My phone would ring in the middle of the night, waking us both up. We never really argued before, but I recall this as the breaking moment. My ex started acting in a way that I'd already seen before, my parental home. In situations like this, I learned that agreeing is usually the quickest way to end confrontation. So I slept on the couch not even a month after moving into my own house. Things escalated from there. After a few more months, I was doing all the work around the home. I was the only one caring for the cats. If I didn't do it, nobody would. Besides that, I wasn't free to be who I wanted. I received mean comments when I did something gender-affirming, for example, a new haircut. Note that at this point I was not ready to come out yet. I created an entire plan and timeline for myself. 2022. During the course of 2022, my ex did their best to keep me down, but I wouldn't let them. At some point they decided it would be easier to give up. We had a talk where we'd agreed we'd mutually break up and divide everything fairly. I had every intention to keep the house as my cats got used to it. I made some friends in the area, and my work was relatively close. As my ex had no intention to keep the house, commuting to work while their parents lived in the town they worked in, we went on from the assumption that I would keep the house. One evening, somewhere in November last year, we had an argument over the money that I'd have to pay them. It started small, as my ex had listed a broken vacuum cleaner on the list of items, and I started asking questions if we could scrap it. The argument evolved, and they threatened to take my cats from me as part of the deal. This was the hill I was willing to die on. Never threaten to take away my cats. I stopped arguing and started calling a friend, as I needed some support. Ex knocked the phone out of my hands and picked up their phone, called their parents and put them on speakerphone. The words my ex spoke will haunt me forever. They told their parents I was trans and wanted to transition. My first instinct I won't share, but you can imagine. After calling a helpline, I calmed down and I gathered my courage, and called up everybody I could think of and told them. I wasn't going to let them win this one. An hour after their initial phone call, their dad showed up and started threatening lawyers and spouting things like I was mentally ill, that I would never successfully transition to my desired gender, and that they would do whatever it cost to get the house from me, or leave me with as little as possible. Malicious compliance time. Fast forward a week or so. Ex sent over a new version of the proposed financial resolution. The amount that I had to pay the ex was increased by a significant amount. I wanted this to be over quickly, so I agreed, as long as my ex would cover the costs of the notary, as their amount was the maximum I could borrow from the bank. They did not know this. They did not agree, and hiked their price again, stating that if I don't agree, the price will just continue to go up. They made an entire Excel spreadsheet detailing their investment as well as mine. What I noticed was that in the Excel, everything was tied together. If X hiked their price, the price to buy me out was getting hiked as well. And that's when I realized I had them by the balls. See, they were blindsided and thought I would do anything to not move to my parents. I argued back and forth and played dumb at one point, just to drive up the price, The email stated that my ex forgot to calculate how much more the house was worth now than 2 years ago, and hiked the price by 20%. As per usual, my ex copy-pasted their calculations and said, "This is the price you pay me," or "This is the price I pay you." And that's when I took my chance. I agreed to let my ex buy me out for the amount specified, and in my reply also stated that all previous negotiations of who pays the notary would also be valid, the buyer. I ended my email with, "I don't have to remind you that an agreement over email is just as valid as a contract." I pushed them to contact a notary within a reasonable time, or I would seek legal counsel to force them to pay my share. Fast forward 2 weeks, and I receive a call from the notary that they are working on a deed and need my details. Approximately a month later, it would be ready to sign. I double-checked the numbers, it was all there, and shortly after it was signed. The reason I'm sharing this now instead of at the end of 2022 is because, like I said, X didn't want to keep the house. It went up for sale immediately, approximately 40,000 euros above market value. I had the house favorited and checked periodically. Every so often it would drop in price and receive a new sticker on the website. It dropped approximately 60,000 euros before yesterday in total, when it was finally sold. I calculated the damages based on their handy Excel sheet, and if we assume the initial fair split like we agreed 3 or 4 years ago, my ex lost about 40,000 euros on their own investment, not only in buying me out, but notary costs, taxes, etc. If we assume the split I initially agreed on to get it over with, my ex lost out on 80,000 euros. I am now living my life to the fullest, with friends and an amazing partner who is truly supportive. Lesson learned, however. I bought a new place for myself, funded by my ex. I will never share ownership of ever again. Never threaten to take away my cats. 3. So in November, I wanted a packer and mover to get a washing machine from my old residence to my new one. These are in 2 different states, like 600 km apart. So I put my details in an online website, my first mistake, and got a call back from this mover. He said he'd get the job done. He sent me his company details over WhatsApp and asked for 500 rupees, that's about $6, as deposit. The second mistake I made was I gave the deposit before he even collected my stuff. Well, he kept saying he's sending someone to collect in the next 2 or 3 days, and then stopped picking up my calls. I checked online reviews, and it turns out he's done this to a few other people too. I asked him to refund the money. He kept saying he would, but then he started ignoring me. So I put up a cybercrime complaint, got in touch with a recovery guy, found an SMS bomber app, and kept bombing him with 1,000 SMS every 2 hours relentlessly. Put up a complaint on National Consumer Forum, emailed cybercrime officials, fired all missiles at him I could. A week later I got a call from the cops, talked to them. 15 days from the start of this ordeal, this dude starts calling me. I said I wouldn't pick up his phone unless he sends me my money. He kept begging for me to pick it up, and when I didn't, he sent me my money back. So I picked up his call. Turns out the cops blocked off his bank account, and he sent the money from another account. Well, I didn't stop there. I made him send a video of himself and his social security details. Then I told him I'd not unblock his bank account till he gives me the info of all the others he has scammed, and till he sends me screenshots of returning those people's money. I got names of other people he'd conned, and since he kept calling me, I blocked him. It's been a month now, and I got a call from a young lady. She asked me to unblock his number as she is his client, and wants her to refund from the blocked account. This lady had the same name of one of the clients he'd scammed. So basically I explained to her that she'd been scammed, and that he gave her my number just to manipulate her, or maybe pressure me, in the hopes that his bank account would be unblocked. I told her that he'd give so-and-so other excuses, and those were the exact things he'd sent to her. The same modus operandi. I gave her all this info, and even the other account number he'd sent me money from. I've told her how to proceed with the cops and get his other bank account also blocked, and pressure him into giving her money back. She had to recover her item from an abandoned godown, and she'd actually gone to the address and it didn't exist, obviously, it's a fake address. I told her he's actually not even in that state, but from another state in a village, as per the info I got from him, and that video I made him send. He's taken 3,000 rupees, $40 from her, which is a lot, so I am now guiding her to hit him even harder so he lands up in jail, and stops conning people. 4. I work at Woodforest National Bank. For those who don't know, it's a bank based out of Texas, located primarily on the East Coast inside of Walmart. This story happened about a month ago. One of our usual entitled Karen customers comes into the bank demanding we print her a new debit card because she lost her old one. We issue debit cards same day so long as they pay a debit card fee, $10, for a reprint or $15 for a new card waived for certain accounts. A reprint was a simple task, so I print her card and sent her on her way. She then walks back into the bank because the last two numbers were slightly rubbed off. This is due to how the machine prints the card and is pretty common. I want you to print this card again. Is it not working? Look, the last two numbers, other banks don't give me cards with rubbed off numbers. I'm sorry, ma'am, but sometimes that happens with the machine. It rubs part of the numbers off when activating the chip. I don't care, it looks terrible. Do it again. Ma'am, I don't think this is a good idea. We really don't have control over how the machine... I don't care what you have to do, just print my card again so it looks nice. She takes a pair of scissors and cuts up the card into tiny pieces in front of me. Print the fucking card now, or do I have to close my account and contact the market manager? The market manager isn't someone you would know unless you've had a conversation with him before. It's obvious she's trying to name-drop him to get me to shut up and comply. Cue malicious compliance. I turn over to my manager, and he gives me a nod. I then put on a devious smile and say, "Absolutely, ma'am. But to ensure this won't happen again, we will need to change the numbers, so I'm going to need you to sign some things." See? Was that so hard? We then spend the next 10 minutes printing out new cards until we get one that doesn't have the numbers slightly rubbed off. Each time the card isn't to her liking, she cuts it up and says do it again. I just smile and say, "Sorry about this, let's try again." Each time, until about 8 cards later, she finally gets a card number that isn't rubbed off. "Finally, this card looks good, thanks." She just leaves with a smug grin thinking she won, and leaving us with her massive pile of cut-up debit cards. What we forgot to remind her of is having a completely new card, generated outside of fraud or expiration, costs $15 to be deducted from your account. This is made clear at account opening, and since she signed off on having all these new cards printed, there was nothing she could say. Normally, I try to help people avoid bank fees. But in this case, screw this entitled woman. A couple of days later, she comes storming into the bank looking angry. "What the fuck did you do to my account?" "I'm sorry, ma'am, but what seems to be the problem?" "There's a bunch of debit card fees in my account. What did you do?" "Oh, every time you had me print a new card for you the other day, a $15 fee was charged to your account. The first one, where you only had me reprint the card number, was only $10. "You need to fucking reverse these fees right now before I call the market manager and get you fired." At this point, my manager steps in. "Hello, ma'am, what's the issue?" "Your dumbass employee tricked me into paying over $100 worth of fees because he kept screwing up my debit card." "Ma'am, could you please not yell? Also, I was there when you demanded we print you a new debit card because you didn't like the numbers being rubbed off. We have your signature on these forms stating that you wanted these cards to be printed. I will not be reversing these fees for you." "Then I want to close my account." "Okay, but first you need to pay off your negative amount balance as well as your line of credit." "Just give me the marketing manager's number this instant." "Sorry, ma'am, but we aren't at liberty to just give out his number like that. Here's a number to customer service if you would like." This is true, as he's instructed us to not give his number out to any customer who asks. The only people who need his number already have it. She takes the number, screams, "I'll have your jobs for this!" Flips us off, kicks over a chair and storms out. We get a call from customer care later about the incident, where we explain everything and scan over all the signed debit card applications. Also, she had us print 8 brand new cards and the one reprint, That cost her about $130 in fees because she demanded a new debit card. The best part is my manager likely would have just waived the original $10 fee had she just been nice and asked. 5. For context here, I work in tile and abstracting. Basically, my company provides insurance to buyers of property so that anything wrong with the property, such as liens, unpaid mortgages, or other title issues, like a death without probate, etc. I was in a business networking group with Karen, and as such, when she went to buy a new house, she went with us, because I was her friend at the time. So Karen and the old man she's buying from, Bob, signed the purchase agreement, stating that their closing would occur on the 28th of August. The purchase agreement for the house she was selling was closing on August 21st. Now, for those of you that don't understand, according to her purchase agreement, Karen must move out on the 21st. She is not allowed to move into the new house until the 28th. We called her about a month and a half in advance to schedule her closing, and told her when the closing dates for the other two parties involved with these two transactions would be. She realizes there's about a week difference in these two dates and asks what that means, so we explain she can't move in until the 28th. She starts to get a bit hysterical about it, and my coworker, perhaps foolishly, tells her she'll talk to the seller and ask if he'll sign early or a pre-sign. This in no way changes the date she's allowed to move in. It just gives people the opportunity to sign at a time that works better for their schedule. They can allow the other party to move in after the pre-sign, which is what my coworker was trying to accomplish. He agreed to come in on the 21st to pre-sign, but did not give permission for Karen to move in early. So she still has to wait until the 28th to move in. Fast forward a month later, and we give Karen a call about a week early to remind her about the pre-signing on the 21st. She asks what a pre-signing is, despite both myself and my coworker explaining it to her. Once she found out she wouldn't be allowed to move in the same day as her move-out date, she calls my boss screaming at her that we fucked up, even though we don't even see the purchase agreements until after they're signed, and their contracts. You can't necessarily just say, wait, let's change the date, after they're signed. Once we explain that and tell her it's either on her real estate agent or her to check the dates and details before it gets forwarded to us, she hangs up and calls her agent, whom I'll call Bigglesworth, and the real estate agent representing Bob, who is a sweet little 70-year-old lady called Mary. Screaming and yelling that everyone else messed up except for her, it got so bad she harassed Mary into giving her Bob's number and then proceeded to harass Bob about it, trying to bully this old man out of his home a weekish early. She then called us back, saying she'd convinced Bob to let her have it early. She even threatened to cancel both transactions, although we told her she could be sued for breach of contract by both parties, and backed out of that real quick. We called Bob to confirm. Bob said, and I quote, "It'll be a cold day in hell before I let that bitch have her way." 80 years old, and this man is my hero. She spent the next 7 days living out of her friend's camper and boo-hooing about it. After this, I avoided her, and she got pissy at me for it, so I finally told her off. It may have been unprofessional of me, but she needed to hear it, since everyone else walks on eggshells around her because she's been through a lot. Sorry, Karen, we all have been. Time to wake up and realize the real world doesn't revolve around you. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 325. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, hit the like button. And if you'd like to get the videos early, support me on my Patreon, which is linked in the description. You'll also find a link to the Hellfreezer merchandise store. Go take a look there, see if you find anything you like. And if you really enjoyed the video, you could leave a tip. You don't have to, but you can. Just hit that little heart with a $sign in the middle if you'd wish to. Okay, no other business today. I think I've got a birthday shout-out later in the month, but nothing right now. So let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is there a sound that you find it difficult to properly rest or sleep without? For me, it's the sound of fans going. I need that kind of thrum in the room. I've generally got two. I've got an older one and a newer but not brand new one. So I think it's about 6 years old now. Still works fairly well. And I kind of need the hum of both of them. It's very soothing to me. Plus, I like the air circulating. And I find it difficult to rest without that. I've even gotten to the point now, I'll generally have something playing on my phone. It helps kind of calm my mind at nights when I'm perhaps feeling a bit agitated or whatever reason, if I just can't rest my mind. It helps kind of soothe me off and send me to sleep. Like bedtime stories, I guess. I guess you can have bedtime stories at any age, really. And that works. And I always notice if something's off. If I've got one fan on, but wait, that doesn't sound right. Then I'm like, oh, right, I forgot to turn the other one on. Or I'll spend some time before I go to bed thinking, nope, not that, okay, that. Oh, I haven't heard that, no, okay, put that on. And I'll listen to it for a little bit as I drift off to sleep. And I'll generally just leave it playing throughout the night. And that's what works for me, so why don't you let me know what you think in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.